Okay, I see that we're live. Can I call the meeting to order?
I think you can, yes.
Okay. Call the meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. Let's see. Did we already go around do we need to do a roll call or anything to see if we have quorum?
I see that we have 4 members of the committee, so I think we have.
Okay, we're good. All right. Oh, yep, I see there. All right, well, we have first item of business is for minute approval. Do we want to, is there any corrections or additions to the minutes before we approve them? Anyone? Okay, is there a motion to approve?
This is Chad. I motion to approve the minutes as is.
Okay, second?
This is Kim. I'll second it.
All right, all in favor of approving the minutes as they stand, say aye, or do we have to raise hands?
Aye.
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 All right, any opposed? All right. Motion passes. Minutes are approved. Public comment. Were there any submissions for public comment?
There were not.
Okay. Future plan focus topics. Jim, why don't I throw it over to you?
Certainly. So we have one more meeting scheduled for November. And I'm kind of anticipating that's our last meeting. And so I would think our focus topic would really be about a kind of full wrap up of the projects and then kind of financially where we sit. The 2 remaining pieces that will be beyond November are curriculum and technology, which you'll hear about later this evening. So that's kind of my thought. Are there specific items within kind of a full wrap up that the committee members would like to see us be prepared to talk about in November? I realize that's a pretty open-ended question.
And now this won't be the only time that we'll be seeing. Are we still doing a ribbon cutting, or is that to be determined still?
We'll get to that in just a couple of items about the schedule. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think a wrap up and essentially, because we're not going to zero out the books because there still will be money to be spent. So it'll be one of those things where we either just pause until all the money is spent. And I don't know, is there a projection timeline on that? Is that like 2-3 years out, or?
Well, the vast majority will be spent prior to November and probably paid prior to November.
Yeah.
But as the technology and curriculum budgets were designed with a 10-year lifespan, they will extend another roughly 6.5, 7 years.
Yeah. So is there any, I mean, just tell me about the procedure on that. Do we just disband until then? I don't know what I'll be doing in 7 years.
I don't know either what you'll be doing or what I'll be doing. I could see where we might, a few years out, bring the committee back, those that are able to, and give another budgetary update on those 2 remaining projects, or the board may choose to say that they would manage that from here on out.
Yeah, or if they find a need to reconvene a new board, right, or something to.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think a wrap up would be great.
Okay.
November. Yeah.
Jim, this is Chad. I guess as a wrap up, I would want to make sure we just talk about what the current status is of the projects that we had going on, whether complete or any lingering issues, warranty items, and making sure we have, budget left in the bond to cover anything that, typically warranty is obviously covered by the contractor, but there tends to always be some cost associated with pulling that together and things of that nature. So
Okay.
Just a few things that I would make sure we cover.
Sounds good. All right.
All right. Anything else? All right. let's move on to fiscal.
So hopefully you all had a chance to look at it, or you have it in front of you. Not a lot of surprises to it. Really, it's where you'd expect us to be. At this point, we have paid to date through July, which is the most recent month completed, just shy of 200 million on the new high school. As you can see, the pay to date for each of our transformation projects has crept up since you last saw it, which makes sense because we're now in construction and we're starting to get those bills and actually paying them. And also the committed to date on those projects has gone up to what we expect roughly to spend on each of them. And again, that's because we've signed letters of authorization to go ahead and do the purchasing. So that's the kind of two pieces related to both the existing high school and the transformations I wanted to share with you. Again, as we just kind of talked about those 10-year projects, technology and curriculum, you'll see that we have an uncommitted budget between the two of about 7.3 million. And that's because we have not yet signed purchase orders and so forth to buy additional equipment that's part of the 10-year plan that is expected in certain years coming forth. So the majority of our uncommitted budget, or about half of the uncommitted budget at this point, is those two projects. I would call your attention to the fact that we've now spent 247.8 million. And you may go, wait a minute, our bond was only 247.5 million. We're overcommitted. But really, as you know, we were able to leverage some dollars, get some grants, and extend that bond amount clear up to the 277 million. That's our current budget. And so we're living in the bond premium and seismic grant money now. We're very fortunate that we were able to get those dollars early on. And then speaking of leveraging things, I know we've had some conversations about energy incentives and the kinds of things that we've tried to do to bring our buildings up to speed using Energy Trust of Oregon dollars or other dollars. And the most recent one that came up just in the last couple of weeks is that our subcontractor, our electrical subcontractor at the district office transformation, came to us and said, hey, we'd like to go through and upgrade all of the light fixtures that are not slated to be replaced, which there are quite a few in the building, to a modern LED technology. And we can use Energy Trust of Oregon dollars to do so. It's no expense to the district, and they're on site and they're willing to do it. And so we, of course, said absolutely. If it's no cost to us and it's going to save us money in the long run by using less electricity, we are in full favor of that. So another way we've tried to we've been able to leverage Energy Trust dollars and partnerships with some of these new subcontractors that have really been very helpful to us. So I wanted to share that piece of good news with you as well. Any questions on the financial summary?
Jim, this is Chad. I just have a question. So there's roughly 2 million remaining that won't be spent on technology and curriculum. Some of that may still be contingency, I'm sure, for the remaining closeout of the high school and the transformation projects, but is there a plan, or what's the thinking on utilizing that 2 million?
And let me be very clear that the technology and curriculum budgets you see there are the focus topic tonight, but those are not part of the high school or part of any of the transformations. It is technology that keeps us or gets us to a 1-to-1 device ratio to students. And that has to be replenished over time as devices get old and worn out or outdated. So that money you see sitting there is really about buying new Chromebooks 2 years or 4 years or 6 years from now. And that's why that money sits there. It's not the technology budget within the new high school. There's a separate line item in the high school budget for technology. This is about the district-wide 1-to-1 device program.
That makes sense, which is 7 of the 9 million, right? That's uncommitted. Yeah. So I was speaking to the 2 million that's between the 5, you know what I'm saying, the 7 and 9.
And some of that is just we haven't signed all the LOAs on work, and they're coming, they're change orders, those kinds of things that we have to work through. And so while we haven't signed the LOAs, it's laying there as uncommitted, but we're really targeting or tracking that money and knowing that we are likely to have to spend it for some of these last minute changes that we're approving, not changes, but additional expenditures that we have to pay for.
That makes sense. And those are projected to send us over budget in any way.
No, Rick's goal is to have $1 left in the bank account. Mine is 99 cents less than that. And we're tracking to make sure that we are within the bond budget for all the work that we have to do.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, this may have been something that was addressed quite a bit earlier, but on the line item that says program contingency bond premium, project 16, there was an article in the Oregonian, I don't know, a couple weeks ago about school districts issuing premium bonds, kind of higher interest rate. Is that how we got that money, or is that a different thing?
It's the same thing. I think the way it, I didn't see the article. I've heard a little bit about it.
Okay.
Fine. The bond premium is essentially when we put our bonds out, there were people wanting to invest in us that were willing to pay us more than the value of the bond. And Rick, you can jump in and correct me if I say this wrong. But because we hit the market at the right time, there was a premium paid for the bonds. And so we get to collect that and use that in other ways. And so line 16 at one point had a number in it. It's been dedicated to the new high school. And it's part of what helped us pay for the additional ground and
Right.
and the work on that ground.
Okay, thank you.
So I had somebody else ask me like, well, it sounds sketchy. It's not sketchy. It's if you go to the market at the right time and people are willing to pay you more for your bonds than what kind of you advertise them at, it's a benefit that we get to reap. We didn't do anything unseemly to get there. It's just how the market works.
Yeah, I think the concern is that it, the way that the article puts it, at least, and again, I'm not a financial guy, but the way the article puts it is that if it is offered at the premium rate, then it does put taxpayers on the hook to repay, the additional amount, kind of a thing. And so, and I said, I don't think that's what we did, because I thought it was more like found money versus, okay, well, we're gonna have to, not just pay back the original bond, but this additional amount as well. So
my understanding is we're on the hook for the 247.5 million.
yeah, that's what I thought too, but
I would be happy to check with Phil Johansson, our CFO, or if it's anything other than that answer, I will get back to this committee with that.
okay, great. Yeah, and that's just so you know, that was my understanding from when it was explained, but I was like, oh, it was like 2 years ago. I don't know if I'm quite remembering.
Mm-hmm. Rick, is there anything that you can correct me on or add to that?
This is Rick. No, Jim, I think you explained it well. It doesn't increase the debt that the taxpayers pay back. It's a premium that is earned based upon the investor's opinion of the bonds. And many districts have gotten premiums. We were lucky with the one we got here, but it doesn't increase what the taxpayers owe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else related to the financials?
This is Chad, not for me, thanks.
Okay.
No.
All right. I'm gonna go ahead and move us on to the schedule. The two items on there, as you can see, are the dedication of the new high school and the ribbon cutting for the transformation schools.
Hold on. Was there anything on the project roll-up that we got to go over?
Only if there's questions.
Okay, sorry. I thought we were just talking the financial summary part. Okay,
Sorry, I lumped those two together.
that's all right. I just
Sorry. Yeah, Taylor, thanks for bringing that up because this is Chad. I do have a question on that if we still have time, or if you have a question, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I just didn't want to skip it.
Thanks. On the project roll-up, I had just a question on some of the um, transformation projects. So I'm noticing like our building and construction is in the 40 to 50% range as far as paid. And I'm wondering if that's what you were expecting at this point. Is that based on invoices that haven't been processed, or is it an indication of where the contractor is from a schedule standpoint? And is that schedule standpoint where you expected them to be mid-August?
I'll take a shot at that and then ask Rick and Casey to follow up. But it's partly just how the invoices lag the work. And so and remember, this is only through July 31st. And so we continue to process those as they come in. Schedule wise, I mean, I think you'll hear from Casey and Mary here in a few minutes that we're looking pretty good for the transformations. COVID has not helped, but we're working our way through those issues. So I think the 40% is not unreasonable, given the amount of work that's been done, the billing that's happened, and where, as of July 31st, we were at with work left to be done. So, Rick or Casey, would you add to that?
I will. So yeah,
Go ahead,
I mean, the invoices to date on the 31st, I don't even think they included the July payments. So the July payments usually come in the first week of August. So I mean, that's why it looks a little low. Well, lower than you would think at this point. It doesn't match percentage down. Like if I pull out the pay up right now, it'd be closer to what it is. But that wasn't included in your report that you got for July. So I think that's on, I think 3 or 4 of them, but they weren't included. So that's why it looks a little low for that being, right now we're August, 18th, but it was different on that day.
That makes sense. Thanks.
Any more questions? All right, go ahead, Jim.
Thank you. So I'll move us onto the scheduling, and the 2 items there were kind of the ribbon cutting and the grand opening or dedication that we'd hoped to have. Due to COVID, we're not able to have the big grand opening that we had hoped for, or the ribbon cuttings. We tried to do a smaller scale, and just the logistics of trying to do tours with people on site, given the constraints we have with social distancing, that became challenging. So we still have on the 29th, we're going to have, for those folks that have been involved in the bond process, an opportunity to tour the building. And we'll likely do the same on the ribbon cuttings on September 12th for the transformations. And so I would suggest you watch your emails for that. But unfortunately, it's not going to be the big event that we had hoped for. So we are in the process of having Casey Overcamp, who you may have seen his videos for us, the drone videos. He's going to help us with a tour video of the new building that will be available for folks. So we will share more information on about those dates as we get it.
Does that free up some budget for something else?
Not a lot.
Okay.
They weren't big grand events. They were just big events in terms of people, numbers.
Okay.
No questions on that. Then I'm going to move on to kind of our rolling updates on transformations, new high school, county road work, and moves. And I think what I'll do is ask Mary to go first on her 2 transformation projects, and then we'll kind of turn over to Casey and let him cover the next few. And Ken, if you would jump in wherever you have anything to add, that would be fantastic. Go ahead, Mary.
Jim, the spacebar trick wasn't working for me for a second. This is Mary. I am managing the Ridges and the middle school transformation projects out here in Sherwood School District. So I'll begin with the Ridges project. Our substantial completion date is this Friday. And so Russell Construction, that's our general contractor on the project, has done a really great job of getting the district in a good position so that we can meet our substantial completion on Friday. We've done 2 mini punches at that site where we've been able to turn over quite a few classrooms to the district so that they can begin getting ready for teacher arrival at the end of next week. The classroom remodels are really looking great. The front entrance, the storefront is now in. So if you drive by, you get to see now the new entrance, and they've begun painting the canopy, which should all again be done here shortly in the next few days. So that school is really beginning to take off and look like a new, great new elementary school. As we've said, COVID hasn't always been our friend. We've hit a few delays, mainly on getting product in time when we need it. But the contractors have really worked hard to make sure that we're getting these spaces turned over to everybody so that school can begin as scheduled and there's no interruptions. So excited to show it off to the community on the 12th of September. Then moving on to the middle school transformation, that one also is looking to hit substantial completion on the 21st. So this Friday, and Triplet Wellman is the contractor there, and they are working furiously to make sure that all of those spaces, we've touched just about every area in that former high school, have done some form of transformation work there. And so the extended learning areas are coming along, the new classrooms are coming along great. The covered play is a really nice addition to the backside of that campus. So we're excited to get to show that off. And then just even the removal of the trailers in the front part of the campus has opened up the front scenery. So that area will get hydro-seeded, and this fall you'll get to see some new grass and everything there. So the former high school will look like a wonderful new middle school in the coming days. And so excited to show that off to everybody. So that's kind of the nitty gritty. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to help answer any of those as they relate to the Ridges or the middle school transformation.
At what point do we officially stop calling it the old high school and just call it the middle school?
The middle school, I know. I usually refer to it as the middle school, but then I'm like, well, if they don't know, because some people still get confused. I'm like, the old high school. But
Yeah, this is Ken. We had a fire alarm at the new high school, and they called it the old high school. So even our own fire department is still struggling with which one's which.
one day we'll get it.
No
Okay, any other
for me,
questions
please.
about the transformation projects?
We can turn it over to Casey. He can give you an update on the elementary school transformation and the district office transformation.
Okay.
All right, this is Casey. I was just catching up with getting my updates ready for you there. I wanted to give you a sneak peek at the EST auditorium here.
Well, I can see.
You see me?
Not where you are.
Kim, this is Jim. Can you mute your mic, please?
See, I unmuted it.
Can you all see this picture?
Yes.
That's great.
So this is the old auditorium, as you guys have, many of you been in there, I'm sure, to watch basketball games for your kids and whatnot. And this is the new learning hub. So what you're looking at is the new barreled ceiling with the skylights. Right here below us will be the new staircase going down. But it's a major transformation. This was a week ago. Even since then, all the paint's done and they've cleaned up and they're starting their work on the flooring. So they're pretty exciting where we're at with that. Overall, they're sitting at about 60% of classrooms have been turned over to punch list as of today, and turning over the rest of them by the end of the week. That learning hub will be kind of trailing here. It'll be done by the end of the week as well. We're getting punch list, I think, early next week. The back playground area, we put the chips in today. Playground equipment's in, with the exception of there's a hill that goes from our new covered play gym down that had a delay to COVID with the 2 slides that go in there. So the new turf has not been installed there. So that's the one thing that's kind of a COVID delay that you'll see out there. It may not look done, and that's scheduled for delivery the first week in September. Overall, all the exterior improvements in the front are complete, and they are just kind of plowing their way through. It's obviously, as you know, a big project. We had a lot of unforeseen conditions that popped itself up, but some of our underground, when we were getting ready to put new sinks in the 6th grade classroom, found some sanitary that didn't flow properly and got those fixed. Storm drain issue when we took out the old share center and the modular there. So they've battled through and kind of tackled all the unforeseens, and we're at a pretty good spot. We're able to turn this over to teachers next week, and so really excited for you guys to come in and see. Like I said, that new learning hub is really transformational. We closed up that old stair that used to go down to the right, and so you really get that real secure entrance and just a single point of entrance that I think is important for a community school. So I think that it's probably about the highlights of the project as it is there. I mean, it's really cool. New paint throughout. So it's really light and bright now, and a lot different than what you remember when it was the old middle school. Moving on to the Hopkins Elementary School now, the district office transformation. They really hit their stride. They got all classrooms done. They were complete and ready for punch list on Monday. So that was, everyone was pretty excited about that from the brick team. We all joked that that's the building we need the least, but every opportunity you get to kind of get ahead is gained for all of us when it comes to the move and other pieces of that. So another space that has really changed probably more than I thought it would. You go in there and you can see the new carpet, new paint on the walls, a lot more light just from kind of opening up some doorways for some relights. The spaces when you go in, you kind of really get a feel for it. It's no longer an elementary school, and it's definitely an office space. And so that's pretty cool to see when you guys walk around. The exterior wise, we got the new drive through that goes through the entire site for maintenance to get in and out, new maintenance shop out back, a little hang up with just getting some of the fencing materials, and that's going to get closed up here pretty soon. But for the most part, in really good shape and ready to show you guys that on the 12th as well, and get our staff moved in. Now that they see it's done, they all want to move in a little quicker. So Jim and Ken and I are trying to figure out a plan for that. So overall, good shape. Excited to show you guys that one as well. Moving on, I think I'll start with the offsite because as you guys know, it's kind of some exciting news this last week. We finally got Elwert back open and 99 back open, and so we're fully functional. That's step one for us, because in order for us to get the city to be really feeling like we're ready for school, or kids when we're ready to get back, is they want to see all those sidewalks done. So we're pushing really hard with Kerr on that aspect. They've ran into a couple of COVID concerns with their sidewalk contractor. It's Roger Langoliers Construction. They've lost almost a third of their staff to either exposure or COVID in the last 2 weeks. So it's been a real challenge for them trying to get wrapped up. I kind of made the comment that, there's more sidewalk contractors out there. Let's, try to figure something out here. I got to get a school open. So, I'm trying not to be insensitive to the COVID concerns, but at the same time, we have our own priorities. So it's kind of a struggle. Contractually, we're basically just payers, not really contracted to make them go. So all I can do is advocate for the district. So, but we're getting there. The lights are in, everything's electrified by PGE, and landscaping's in there, and so we're on the right path, and we'll definitely be ready here in the next week or so, getting that complete and ready for staff and student. Well, staff's been there for a while now. They've been out there, the administration, and we have some teachers that are moving in, but really it's just kind of a public entrance aspect that we're managing with those sidewalks. The new high school, as you guys have seen, in really good shape. It's green everywhere, not everywhere. Everywhere we have irrigation is green. We're still fighting some yellow spots where we have the no-mow areas, but it's not what we expected those to be. like that at this time of the project. So exterior wise, we're the only thing we're really trying to finish is there's some loose pieces of canopy that are up in that main entrance there. Those are on site now and being installed. And then we have some exterior lights heads that were delayed. And so like if you go out there, you can kind of see that there's some double heads that are missing up there, and those are on site and starting to get cameras attached to them so that we can have motion and camera detection out on site. So that was kind of a feature that we added that give us an enhanced security on the exterior. Inside the building, punch list continues. They had 6,000 punch list items between their own punch list. Skanska did a pre-punch, and also the brick punch list. So it's a large list that they've been attacking really hard. They're down to, I think, what was it? I think we heard 500 this week. So it's still a considerable list that they're attacking, and we told them that we want them out of there by the end of the month. So that's a big push right now, is try to push them to get out of our building and be done, and to a satisfaction that we're level there, that we're good with. The auditorium was the last piece to get punch list. Walked through that this morning. It looks amazing. I mean, that's one of those spaces that we watched it grow for so long with just concrete and different pieces. Kind of really understanding that vision. We've seen some of the renderings, but it really came to fruition, and a really cool space out there. So excited to show you guys that on the 29th. But overall, I think it's a good spot right now as we welcome teachers next week and this week, and getting all of our security trio kind of ironed out, and having all the important systems up and running when we have operations going here in the next week.
I have a question about the sidewalks. This is
Okay.
Taylor Giles. So if those are not done, does that prevent opening, or is it one of those things where it's okay, like we can consider the we can get certificate of occupancy or whatever if it's still not done?
So they're done for the 99% of it. There's 3 big sections that need to be complete for us. It's the Hanley Elward intersection, in the Elward Haiti intersection. These are just the 90-degree kind of radius points. They did all their flat work straight up ahead. They did, it's all production runs, and then they just didn't finish, to be honest with you. And this is not uncommon for flat work. Usually you get the straight runs done, and then you come back and do the ramps, because they have the ADA tactile pieces. So they are almost there. And so ultimately, we've started drafting an email today stating that, if it isn't complete by the 31st, this is causing major ramifications for the school district, and we need to have a plan for if that isn't the case. Because yes, Taylor, they will not allow us to have public in there without those. So it is incredibly important that we get those done. We're including, basically the supervisor of the entire construction piece. His name's Russ Knoble for the Washington County, to make sure that he completely understands the ramifications of not having to complete by the 31st for us as a district. So it has become an elevated issue because it is very important. We had a meeting with the city of Sherwood, basically discussing, they're allowing us to do the tours under our current temporary certificate of occupancy that allows us to have staff under there. So we're good for our tours on the 29th. It's just we ultimately need to get all sidewalks complete to allow us to have complete public access.
This is Chad. Thanks for the update, Casey. I don't have any questions. Great. One comment, there's a new flyover video on the website that's pretty cool as of 8/3. So encourage people to check that out. Looks pretty awesome. Yeah. Nice job.
Thanks.
All right, thanks for the update. Anybody else? Any other comments from the board? All right, let's carry on.
Casey, you want to talk about moves for Ken?
Yeah, I'll talk about moves. So today was our first of a series of moves to kind of finalize our move-ins, or move back, I should say. So we finished we started moving the high school about, I don't know, probably 3 weeks ago. We moved from old high school to new high school, and then today we had a final shipment of kind of the wood shop and miscellaneous pieces that were missing. That, you know, a room that wasn't quite ready to get into, or we couldn't get into because of some of the construction going on on the MST project. So that was to phase one. Mary's got a crew scheduled for Monday, Tuesday. I think we're at someone moving every day next week between those two. We're finalizing our plan for the DOT moves, which will happen some starting next week. It sounds like, maybe, Jim, and also the remainder is kind of by the 14th, the week of the 14th of September. So there's lots of moving pieces with that move. It's really a matter of kind of checking the boxes. Our staff has been amazing getting us floor plans and telling us where teachers need to be. So we've done a really good job of kind of managing those the move pieces so that we're in a position to be successful. And I think we're headed that way.
Great. Thanks, Casey.
Yep.
And
All right.
sorry, go ahead, Taylor. You're on mute, Taylor.
Sorry. Yeah, are we done with updates, or are we on to variance report?
I think we're on the variance report.
Fantastic.
Hey, this is Rick again. So the two things that are going to be a variance for us is we're going to extend the substantial completion date at EST. We still will get it done by the end of the month and be ready for staff. Most of the work there isn't about getting it ready for occupancy. It's some site work and some work that we're going to extend the substantial completion. So that's a variance. We only do that when we need to, and we only do it when it's justified. The other one that I would classify as a variance is the completion of the offsite work. The team has overcame a lot of issues. We've struggled with getting everything that had to come down early on. We struggled with some pipe that needed to be replaced, but we can see the finish line now. It's not a project that we, the district, are the direct manager of. The county is the manager. Casey's done an amazing job reminding everybody that that work needs to be completed before we get occupancy. And as he mentioned, we have elevated our concerns to the county and to the contractor, and we'll be monitoring every day their completion of that work. So we have met with the city to understand what they expect to be completed before they issue occupancy for the public. And our goal is to have that done on about the 27th or 28th. And so that's a major focus. Changing the completion dates is a variant. So we wanted you to know that those are two that we're still working to push to the finish line. Any questions about?
Could you give me the old date and the new date, not just the new date?
So Casey, why don't you answer the date for EST and then the date for the offsite as well.
Yeah, so the original contract completion date was the 17th for EST. We're going to modify it to the 21st.
And how are you watching the changes in the completion dates for the offsite work?
So the offsite, the original completion date was July 23rd for them. And as like Rick said, we're shooting for the 27th at this point of August.
Taylor, does that give you the dates that you
That
requested?
does. Yep. Saves me from having to look them up for my last report, and I'm sure that's good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
There's no other questions for Rick on the variance report. And I'm going to move us forward to our focus topics. You may have noticed if your screen is showing all the participants, we've had a few people join us, and I will allow them to each introduce themselves as we get started. We're going to start with the technology portion, and Brady Stretz is here, and I'll let him introduce himself and give us the kind of rundown of the technology piece we talked a little bit about earlier, but he will certainly go into more detail. So with that, we'll do technology first, and then Gary Bennett and Marlene Carroll, who are here also, will provide us an update on the curriculum. So let's get started with Brady.
My name is Brady Stretz. I'm the Associate Director of Technology, and I'm really excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me. So, you know, in 2016, we built a 10-year schedule for our one-to-one device program. And I want to give you an update on where we're at. Generally, we're on budget, and we are working to keep one-to-one devices in hand through 2026, 2027. We built out a schedule that's even farther, a couple of years in advance, that would get us to 2 full deployment cycles in another year. And we built that out just in case prices changed. You know, we were building out estimates for these devices and their associated costs in 2016. And, you know, looking ahead 12 to 13 years, we weren't totally sure what it would look like, but if the prices do go down and we do find a way to make the budget impact of a yearly device deployment for a class of students smaller, then, you know, we're going to keep those extra years in mind and keep it as a target of something that we could hit. The big update on sort of how the last year have gone, there hasn't been a ton of excitement, which is nice. We did some pre-purchasing of devices in prior years to protect an investment in our first class of touchscreen devices. So the first class of touchscreen devices, we went for a 2-in-1 Dell flip model, and we had this large warranty issue where, you know, basically it damaged the hinge, required replacing the entire device. And so we had those allocated to the middle level. And if you know anything about how middle schoolers generally treat one-to-one devices, the damage rate has been a lot higher at our district and at neighboring districts and partner districts around the region. And so we addressed it pretty aggressively. We shifted all of our middle school flips, our most fragile and expensive device, to the elementary level where it's cart-based and the devices rarely travel from room to room. And that was a success because our damage rates just plummeted for those devices. And, you know, we were able to work with Dell to get any warranty repairs done. And, you know, just the incident rate really went down. And so to replace those devices, we moved a couple of our years. We built out our 10-year schedule out with some years where we would buy multiple grades worth of devices, and then we would do sort of refresh the 9th graders every year. That was our big plan at first. When we ran into this roadblock with the flips, we moved a couple of years purchases up to replace the middle level with a different version. And so in 1920, we've had minimal hardware expenditures this year. We expect to have more purchases in after 2021 and after 2022, and that's due to the way Google supports its products. And that was a really important learning in our first year of this process. After a year, we realized the way Google supports its product, it's called Google's automatic update end. And that's from the device manufacture date and not from the device purchase date. And that was a really important learning for us and something we adjusted to. You know, if you bought, we bought a model a fiscal year ahead of when we deployed it so we could get everything set, and realized that at that point in time with a 5-year AUE life, you know, we were deploying a model that would only be supported for 4 years. And that's when you purchase it in its first year of when it's created. And so a few things helped us out. Number one, we learned, right? And we learned to purchase devices that closer to the date of deployment and devices that were manufactured as close to the date of purchase as possible as well. And Google also made some changes. When we first started this process, our devices had a 5-year AUE life. Google moved a lot of those to 6.5 years. And then starting in 2020, starting this calendar year, any device manufactured from here on out is guaranteed an 8-year life. And all those numbers are great. And you know, what's nice with those changes that Google has made is we're going to run into the end of the life or the device's usability before the end of its support. And so we'll be able to gauge whether device is still useful to us at that point in time. You know, in years 5, 6, 7, 8, a lot of our neighboring districts in the region have said, you know, if you get to year 6 with the student Chromebook, you lucked out. And we've hit year 6 with some of our older devices, and we plan on evaluating those older devices as we move forward. What happens, you know, when they end automatic updates, sometimes you can update devices manually. Finding a cost-effective way to update, you know, all 1,200 devices at the middle level manually, it's fairly rare. And we, you know, we've kept handfuls of devices that have expired just to kind of test and see how they actually operate, and they have stopped accepting updates. And then, you know, we're missing out on privacy and security patches, and the extensions in Chrome stopped working effectively. And so, you know, we've done our testing to see exactly how much we can get out of the software, and then how much we get out of the hardware. So currently we have touchscreens grades 3 through 9, and then in grades 10 and 11 and 12, as we move forward, more and more touchscreens end up there. All of our future purchases will be touch screens as well. A piece I wanted to highlight was our protection plan. You know, we mentioned damage rates being higher at the middle level, and the protection plan is something that's separate from the bond, and it comes out of the general fund. But you know, we wanted to play a way to protect this investment, and you know, we treasure these devices and what they mean for our students and teachers. Just a quick overview of the protection plan, a brief history. We started with this great plan where we prorated it, and we allowed people to sign up for it so that they could sign up once in middle school and once in high school, and it would just kind of carry on with them the rest of their time at that school, which was a really great idea until we got into year 2 and we realized we had essentially built 7 different plans with different corresponding prices to track. It made tracking very difficult. And so we honored those plans, but we also shifted the next year. Again, this is a piece of learning to an annual fee. And so we made the fee smaller, and we adjusted sort of the damage scale for what families were responsible for when damages happened to balance out the budgetary impact so that we could keep our fleet of devices going. That was really, really important learning. And so currently what we have is a yearly $15 fee system. And then we have a 3-tiered incident support system where we try to be really thoughtful and mindful of the different categories of types of damage that could occur. Essentially, first damages are about the families are responsible for 25% of the issue. The second time, they're responsible for about 50% of the repair. And then the third time, it's the full cost of the incident. Starting this school year, all but some seniors will be on that yearly plan. And it's made being able to track it and carry it out and serve all of our students a lot better. It's been a lot more efficient, and it's been a lot more budget neutral than it was that first year. Another piece that I think that's worth noting is just kind of the human side of this. all along, we worked with building principals and counselors who really know our students and our families to work with our families in need who truly can't afford a $50 fee or a full replacement fee of $250 for one of these devices. And we've been really proud of the way our administrators and counselors have really worked with families to support them through those times. And we would never feel good about taking this educational tool and putting an undue burden on a family that they truly couldn't support. And so that's been a part of this process all along too, and an important one. Another piece I just wanted to bring up, just in case you were interested in it, but just why haven't we invested in cases? We haven't invested in cases for our Chromebooks. We have for iPads, and why we haven't for Chromebooks came down to some of the math and some of the guidance we received from districts around us who jumped into this work at the same time or a little bit earlier than us. The expense of a case for a Chromebook versus the repair costs that we can cover with our protection plan were very, very similar. And the cases for Chromebooks aren't as effective as a case for an iPad, a tablet, where it's just one single piece. Even if you have a decent case for Chromebooks and they get dropped, like they often do when kids aren't carrying them properly in the hallway or when they toss their backpack down, they're not quite as protective as what we can get for a tablet. And the ones that are, the price of those cases is just too large of a percentage for a $250 device. And so, that's something we looked into. We shopped around, we had samples, and ultimately when considering case expense versus what the repair cost would be with our system, it just didn't make financial sense for us to do that. And we've allowed students to purchase their own cases all along, and some have. One more piece that's been a part of our plan every year is assistive technology. One thing we're proud of is just our equitable approach to how we deal with students, and with technology, it's no different. We have some students for whom one device just doesn't cut it, and a standard Chromebook or a standard iPad just isn't right for them. And so we've coordinated with our special services department to identify those needs, and we've set aside funding to address that every single year. And so a couple of the things that they've purchased recently are some special oversized laptops for students who are visually impaired. And then recently they purchased a batch of electronic pens that can read text out loud to students. And so for our language students developing their language, or even our visually impaired students, the pens, they hold it over the text and it reads it out to them, what the text is. It's pretty amazing. And so, yeah, I just wanted to make sure we highlighted the assistive technology portion of our budget every year. Moving forward, some learning we've had and some things that we've kind of grappled with throughout is, our touch screen is still a priority in 312. And it's come up that, yeah, the further we get into the future, the more it becomes sort of an expected way that our students interact with devices. And it's just an efficient way for our students to interact with their educational software and programs. And so we're going to continue to prioritize touchscreens.
Hey, I have a question about that though. Sorry to interrupt, but what's the price difference between a touchscreen versus not? Because it does seem like, as much as I like them, personally, most of my interaction is with a keyboard and a mouse. So.
Yeah, that's a great question. In our last round of purchasing, which was in, I believe, sometime in 2018, our last major round of purchasing, our non-touchscreen devices were approximately $235, and our touchscreen devices were approximately $270, I want to say. So we're looking at that's about what, $35 there, and it can fluctuate up or down depending on how much the models cost at that point in time. We're looking at $30 to $50 difference.
I have one more question, not about that though, but about the learnings you keep talking about. So I'm all for learning and figuring this out. Are there some districts that are further on the path than us that we could be learning more from, so that we're not having to make such expensive mistakes? Like not knowing about the deploys and things like that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And the good thing and the bad thing is that we're ahead of the timeline of most of the districts around us in our area. So that it's nice because we were one of the most well prepared to address the pandemic. Our students and teachers were in a great spot. We do, the Northwest Regional Technology community is really strong, and it's called ACPE, and we're connected with districts from all over Oregon and Washington, and that's our first go-to spot, and that's where we learn from each other. And so we're connected to every district in 2 states, and yes, we do.
Okay, last question for a little while. So on the devices that are being purchased, do we find that with the COVID stuff and distance learning and things like that, we would like to pivot a little bit and make it more, all of a sudden it's now, well, these aren't for use in the classroom, they're more for use outside of the classroom, and do we see a blend of that going forward, or are Wi-Fi hotspots a thing that we should be purchasing, or you know what I mean? Like, are there any changes we would make, even though we were fairly prepared, that we would do differently now, thinking, well, what if we have something similar in the next few years?
Yeah, thank you, Taylor. I think that's a really good question. And one of the big differences was the way we addressed elementary learning and secondary learning. And so our 612 devices went home with students every night so that they could keep track of their homework and access the extended day that way. And we hadn't sent any devices home K-5. That's just not something we had built. Some of that has to do with just how appropriate it is for certain homework levels at certain grades. That was one of the largest driving factors of it. The other piece is just how much you can trust a K-5 student to safely transport a piece of technology. And what we've been doing for a few years is we've had a hotspot program at 612 that some families have taken advantage of. I think what the pandemic has shown us the most, Taylor, what it's brought to light the most is just how impactful it is for families without reliable access to high-speed internet. I think that's been the biggest barrier to people accessing their education or accessing this form of education. And there are some families for whom there's a simple intervention, right? It's finding a way to get them access to technology, to Wi-Fi. That's the big barrier. We're lucky that we're in a well-populated, well-served metro area, but we do have some rural families that don't have access to internet, and it's an infrastructure issue. And that's a huge challenge. And it's, we are one of the most well-prepared districts in the state to deal with this distance learning situation from an infrastructure and technology standpoint, but we still have a handful of families that there's not the construction done to get them high-speed internet, and they're relying on DSL and dial-up, and there's little to no cell service in those neighborhoods. And for us, it's relatively low, but it still weighs on us, and we still have to work really hard to find ways to get them access to the internet. And I think more than anything, that's what's brought to light the importance of finding ways to connect families with high-speed internet so that they can access education and access the rest of the world.
This is Jim. Brady, would you maybe elaborate on just how many Wi-Fi hotspots we have deployed to help families?
Yeah, we're pre-pandemic, we were supporting around 30 families, somewhere from 25 to 30 families, depending on the month. And after this spring, that number jumped up to around 80 families. And so when the pandemic first struck, we took we put out feelers for and surveys for how many people needed access to a hotspot. Hotspots were back ordered, and so it took a while for them to come in. And by the time they had come in, some families had found other solutions. And so we were able to keep excess hotspots deactivated so that we weren't paying for them. And we're geared up. We know that, for some families, their financial troubles have only gotten worse over the summer, and we're prepared to meet some more of that need immediately and not wait for delayed supply lines. I have 3 more items, and I'll go quickly because I know I'm over my time limit. But a couple of elements of exposure related to the pandemic that I wanted to make sure this committee got to hear about. Getting K-5 devices home at elementary during a pandemic when we weren't set to send them home, we did not take the time to set up have families sign a special agreement or a special device protection plan. And so, we have devices out there that we haven't seen in 6 months and that we may not seen for who knows how much more time. And that goes with all of our other devices. When we see them every day in school, we know who's pulled the keys off of their keyboard. We know which screens are cracked, and we know what needs we need to address, and we can get those devices repaired. We don't know any of that right now. And so that's an area of exposure that didn't exist 6 months ago. I think additionally, the bright spots in how we were built to respond to this is, I said it earlier, I'll say it again, the foresight of everybody involved in planning this and supporting this capital bond to set aside money for one-to-one set us up as good as anybody in the state to meet the demands of distance learning. I've been on calls with other superintendents and other technology departments, and they are facing some really serious challenges that we are 4 years ahead of. And so that's been so nice for us to focus on meeting the needs of our students in other ways beyond getting them a device. And then also, the growth of our staff's ability to be well-versed in using and leveraging technology to make a difference in the learning of our students, which is the goal in all of this. That's been so key in helping us respond. And it's made the devices even more valuable because this is now their lifeline to school and to education. And so I'm so grateful for all of the work that has been done in the past. And I hope we never have to face another pandemic, but we were as well prepared for it as anybody could have been. Thank you.
Any questions for Brady?
Just chat. I don't have any questions. Thanks for the overview. That was really good.
This is James. I got a quick question. How is your tracking platform? Because I know that with our oldest son, we had turned in equipment and the district was saying it wasn't turned in, and we asked them to go look at the inventory and they found it. Is that improving? So, I mean, there's a lot of items going in and out and things getting repaired and so forth. How is that done?
Yeah, I'm sorry you had that experience. That's really frustrating. I still remember the name of the teacher in 10th grade who charged me for 2 books that I know I turned in. And so my heart goes out to you. I won't call her out on this phone call though. We use Destiny, and Destiny is the system that tracks all of our library books and lab equipment and all other school equipment. Our devices are tied there as well. And so the check-in, check-out process happens at every school building at the beginning and ending of every year. It's over the course of 3 days at the high school level and over the course of 2 days at the middle school level. And that's the system that we use.
And quick follow-up, how has the return rate been? Are you guys running into a lot of issues with having to try and track units down or charge for people that are not turning them in, or how's that going?
Yeah, thank you. That's a really good question. And it's really good. Overall, it's very positive. And yes, we do have a handful of families that we have to work with in the summertime where we don't hear back. And our process for that is if it's not something that's covered by any of our protection plan, is just choosing not to turn it back in. And we reach out as politely and persistently as we can, and the devices are locked and bricked, and any device that we should have back that we don't have back, a screen will pop up that says, if you see this device, please call Sherwood School District at this number.
So Brady, just to be clear, then we remotely make that device unusable. When you say bricked, for those that aren't familiar with that term, it basically turns the device into the equivalent of a brick. It has no useful value to the person holding it at that point. Correct?
Thank you for translating my tech speak. I apologize for using that vocabulary.
I'm an old tech guy, so I'm guilty of it also, so don't worry about it. I would like to point out one thing that Brady didn't bring up related to our tech, which is we have rolled out these 5,100 devices plus the teacher devices. And we did that really with adding one staff member to the team. And that's an incredible amount of additional devices for a small team, the small team that we have. And again, as a former IT guy, I know just the level of work it took to get those devices out and then to continually support them moving forward. And Brady and his team really deserve a lot of credit for making that happen and for it to continue working as well as it has. So I want all of you to understand kind of that background work and just the really limited resources that was required in terms of people. And that's a credit to Brady and his team. So.
Hey, I know this is probably outside the bond purview, but at the end of the useful life of these, when we start replacing them, is there a plan to offer them for sale to families or anything after they've been wiped and reset, or is that something that's just, we'll worry about it in 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. It's not one that we have an answer for you at this time. And, we're going to need to have an answer in about a year. We've talked about different options. The challenge again with Chromebooks after they're no longer supported is it's a device that's not secure. And so it's hard to put out devices that aren't secure by official software updates out into the ecosystem. And so, that's kind of an issue that we're facing.
And Brady, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we've had the opportunity to sell some back in the past. And so there is kind of a value also to trading them in essentially towards new product.
Yep, just trying to avoid all of them going into landfill, somewhere. I mean, some of those Chromebooks, it's one of those things where, yeah, it's fine for my second grader to just play, web-based games on for fun kind of a thing,
Absolutely. If there's no further questions for Brady, I'm going to introduce Gary and Marlene and let them carry on with the discussion of curriculum. Brady, thank you very much for your time. You're welcome to stick around, or you're welcome to go get ready for your daughter's 1-year-old birthday party tomorrow. Gary, if I can, I'll turn it to you.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Thanks, Brady. Nice job. I'll introduce myself first, then I'll turn it over to Marlene, have her introduce herself, and then we'll jump right in. So I'm Gary Bennett. I'm the assistant superintendent, and my main role is to oversee teaching and learning and all things sort of related to students in the district, everything non-facilities.
And I'm Marlene Carroll. I'm the Associate Director of Curriculum and Instruction, and I run teams through adoption processes, amongst other things, with teaching and learning.
And more than that, to be honest with you. So the way we'll break this up today is I'll kind of talk, to make it simple, I'll sort of talk about the money side, and Marlene will sort of talk about where we are with adoption side, if that makes sense. So I'll share my screen with you. I don't use Zoom as much as another platform, so hopefully this is as easy as I think it's going to be. hopefully you're seeing my screen. Is that you seeing my screen? Is it big enough that you can see it?
Yes, we are, Gary. And I think it is big enough.
Okay. So just wanted to talk, this is just a sort of a summary of a sheet that we use to track where we are with the budget. So what we've got across the top of the spreadsheet are the different subject areas. ELA is English Language Arts. ELD is English Language Development. ELL, ELP is really just another way to say English Language Development. And I think the rest are pretty self-explanatory. The one thing that might not be self-explanatory is the contingency piece. And I believe last time I talked to this group about a year ago, we talked about rolling $140,000 out of the technology budget, which was trending under, into the curriculum budget, which was trending over, to add some contingency. And I don't recall for sure if we talked about that, but whether we did or we didn't, that's what we did about a year ago. And so that's sort of the layout of the budget, and that 140 actually comes, Brady didn't talk about how well the technology budget's doing, but it was trending under enough that we were able to move some money over and build some contingency for a curriculum. Down the left-hand side of the spreadsheet, you've got the years covered by the adoption, and then out in the actual matrix, you can see the years in which money's budgeted, and those are the years in which ODE recommends or requires adoptions of us. And so that's sort of how we built this sheet out, so to show where we are. So does the sheet make basic sense to folks? Okay. So
I just have just one quick question on this. So when it's new curriculum, is it because the curriculum has been updated, or there's a different way to teach it, or there's new philosophies, or stuff wearing out? What is the additional expense, like in science or math, where you spend some now and some in 9 years, even though I don't know how much changes in math in that amount of time?
So there's a long answer and a short answer. I'll try to find the middle ground. So the short answer is that ODE, Oregon Department of Education, requires that we do an adoption every 7 years. We have to go through a process and purchase new instructional materials every year. The caveat to that is, generally speaking, Oregon schools have not been well enough funded to buy new materials every year. And so most districts fall way behind on their adoptions. And there's a waiver process that you go through and things of that nature. Sometimes things don't change that radically. So I would anticipate that $550,000 we have for math in 2024, I would guess, if I had to guess right now, we would not need all of that money, because I don't see us changing math. We have a tightly aligned K-12 math platform that we believe is working well for our students. And so that might be a case when we might not need to do another adoption. But in the case of both math and English Language Arts and Science, in the recent years, we did have a major change in standards when we moved to the Common Core standards in English Language Arts and Math, and to what are called the Next Generation Science standards in Science. And so sometimes it comes because it's in ODE's 7-year cycle, and sometimes there's a significant change that is required. When we look, so does that answer your question? There's more to it than that, but I think that's the basic part of it.
Yep, thank you.
So when we look at where we are in curriculum adoptions, I think there's some good news and some not as good news. Some good news is we trended well under in our ELD adoption, $40,000 under what we budgeted, and we were 34,000 over in our health adoption. The reason there's money encumbered here, and this talks about one of the risks I want to talk about, is this is an ongoing subscription for our that we have a yearly fee that we have to pay for our health adoption, largely at the elementary level. And so that one nice thing about buying a science book, and this kind of relates to your question, I think that was Taylor who asked the question. I can't see you all on the screen, but one nice thing about buying a science book is at the end of 7 years, if you don't have money for the next adoption cycle, you still got the science book. You get into a subscription-based model, which is becoming more and more the trend of publishers. Then you don't necessarily have a book at the end of a cycle. And so you've got to kind of plan for that. And so there's a couple areas like middle school science. We have an online science curriculum. And that's great for 7 years. And at the end of 7 years, we'll have to renew it. So luckily we have another chunk of money set aside in 2024-25 for another science adoption, which I do think we'll need, partially because of the need to update the middle school one, but at the high school, they bought very little textbooks and curriculum and bought largely updated scientific equipment that was sort of cutting edge technology that they could use to do labs and things of that nature with. And my guess is in 7 years, there will be more of that to buy. Other things to note on here, the money that's encumbered under English language arts, there's a couple things in that. One is we're just about to make a purchase for building out. Marlene will talk a little bit more about this in her presentation, but the English language arts adoption we've done call for building out classroom libraries to give kids a bunch of different choices of books they can read. Sort of moving away from always having the class read the same book to having groups of students engage in book clubs and read individual choice novels, much more engaging for kids. And so we're building out those libraries. And down here in social studies, this is, I believe, a high estimate. I don't believe it's going to cost that much of our current high school social studies adoption. And we're just working on lowering the numbers of books we're actually buying. And I think that'll bring that number down a little bit. I think we had more books than we actually needed in our original estimate. And so we've been working to pare that down and trying to save that money. I think that's a pretty good overview of the financial piece. I think the good news is I would say we are on track to be able to, when we went out for the bond, we said we would be able to purchase new curriculum through 24-25. That's what we told the community we'd be able to do, ending with that science adoption right there in 24-25 would be the last adoption we have covered in this budget. And things are trending high in some places, but I think we have two chunks of contingency. One, I said this math before, I don't believe we'll need all this money. I believe it will come in well under that. And then we have this chunk down here of contingency at $140,000. And so that's kind of an overview of the financial piece. I'll quit talking now because I imagine you all have questions. I'd be happy to answer them as best I can.
Where does the money come from for this stuff without a bond? Like, are we going to be passing another bond? Like, I can see James's head boiling on this. Are we going to pass another bond in 2025? Is that the plan?
So the plan, that's a good question. So the plan is that the district has been investing minimally. We haven't had as much funds to do as we wanted in a curriculum sinking fund. It's not technically a sinking fund, but it's where I believe we're putting $100,000 a year aside over the life of the bond that goes into a fund that sits aside and rolls over every year for curriculum and technology, so that when the bond is over, we have some general fund dollars to continue to pay for some of this stuff. And so that's our plan. Number one, just having a line item in the budget where we're accounting for some of it, but also to save some money to buy some of it. But that is a challenge, and that's why most districts are way behind on their curriculum adoptions, because they just haven't had the funds in their general fund dollars to buy it. And I can tell you our kids have much more updated instructional materials than districts that don't cover it with a bond.
This is Jim. I would just add, this is also one of the reasons that our district and other districts defer their maintenance on their buildings, is because they need to do the curriculum, and we talk about putting the money in the classroom, and this is one of those ways where we definitely make a trade-off between our buildings and their physical structures and the classroom. And so as someone who sat on the budget committee for a number of years, I know we've made those trade-offs, and we chose to try to fund curriculum at a time and not the buildings. So it's a great question, Taylor, that we really constantly have to think about, is how do we fund these things? And we are lucky to have a bond at the moment, but we do have to be prepared for when the bond is over. What do we do next? And Gary's right, we're putting some money away, and that will definitely help extend it as well.
But it will not be a full long-term solution by any means. I don't want to lead people to think that that's the case. But we'll still be in better shape than most districts. And I can tell you, there are districts that are right around us that adopted their first math curriculum in over 20 years recently. And I can tell you, we've learned a lot about math instruction in the last 20 years, and the way we look at it is radically different than it was 20 years ago. So we're quite fortunate. Other questions, or did that answer your question sufficiently?
That's it for me.
Okay, if there's no further questions, I'll turn it over to Marlene and sort of let her talk about the teaching and learning aspect of the adoption piece. And I'm gonna figure out how to unshare my screen here.
Thank you, Gary. This is Marlene. So as Gary kind of mentioned, the adoption process can be really quick over a course of a year or two, or sometimes we have a longer process. In the English language arts adoption, we really changed the way we thought about literacy and language acquisition, and we moved from we changed our system into a more balanced approach. And so teachers are reevaluating what they're teaching and best practice, as well as every single text that's in students' hands, which is a huge part of the adoption, is to have a classroom library. And so, as you know, if you have kids, books are constantly coming out and they get excited about new series. And we want those texts in students' hands so that they learn the, skills for reading acquisition. And so we have to constantly update those libraries. And that is one of the reasons why our ELA budget is kind of a process, because we're refreshing those texts every year. Teachers are going through them and refreshing their libraries, which K-12, that can be quite a lot of money overall. As for our science, we completed our 6th through 8th grade adoption, but we still need to purchase our elementary, and we were going to begin that process this fall. And right now we're trying to prepare our teachers for distance learning. So we are going to continue to move forward, but we are moving forward a little bit slower. And really training teachers on analyzing the standards. That's what we base our curriculum adoption on, is analyzing the state and national standards that we have to teach students, and then identifying resources maybe in the next year. They have a lot going on right now. And that's kind of where we are with social studies as well. We need to adopt a K-8 social studies program, and we piloted a program last year, but it just didn't fit the needs. And it was great that it was a pilot and we weren't committed to it because it didn't really follow the standards, and it was challenging to work with for teachers. And so we decided to go back and start the process over and go back to the standards, and then identify resources that will make that social studies curriculum just more suited to the Sherwood philosophy and the standards that we're trying to teach students. The great part about the adoption process is it is a process that we go through, and a lot of research and teachers' time goes into it. And so we don't just choose anything, and we can always try something out. And if it's not working, we go back and we fix it and change. Any questions about those adoptions?
I just have a comment. As a product manager, I love the idea of trying things out and testing them and adapting to see what works. As a parent, sometimes that comes across as, didn't we just switch math curriculums, or didn't we just, like, if sometimes it feels like a PR problem where it's not clearly communicated that this is a trial program, or that here's what didn't work, or things like that. So that would be my only word of caution, is just to make sure that it's clear that either this is for 7 years, we're going to stick with this, or hey, we're going to just try this for a year kind of a thing.
I think that's really good feedback, and something we certainly need to close that loop with. Absolutely.
All right, any other questions? All right. Pull up. Shoot. Just let go of my.
Taylor, I'll help you out. If people are done asking questions about curriculum, we can let Gary and Marlene go. And then the next item is board report input for you, Taylor, which we traditionally do.
So
on the curriculum,
your time and working on this bond with us, and appreciate you, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, Gary, Marlene, and yeah, team, that was fantastic. Thank you very much. And it looks like we've also, well, we've lost our technology guy, but great work. It's really, it makes me happy as a parent and as a citizen to just know the amount of effort and time that goes into this. So thank you.
Thanks, we appreciate it. Have a good night. Take care.
All right, so my report, there's, well, does anybody have, I'll read off my bullet points here in a minute. Does anybody have anything specifically, or just want to hear where I'm starting from? All right, so here's, I've got the dates of the substantial completion that we heard from Mary. I've, you know, a couple of bullet points about the 60% of the classrooms done on the conversion of the offices, the district offices, and they're down to their final punch list. We've got LWRP being open with sidewalks nearing completion. I've got the 2 variance dates that are pushed out that I'll call out as, I'm not going to say they're concerns, but they are things that should be reported on. And then, you know, another thing was in the technology field that this bond has, in our early action on it, has set us up better than most to weather the pandemic. And then just that, you know, we saw and, you know, we saw the plan for the curriculum purchase plan, and that we've approved that. I don't really have any insight into that other than it looks like we're on track to be able to update it more frequently than other school districts around us. Anything else anybody would like to add on any of that?
Taylor, sounds like you covered it pretty well. Thanks.
Well, hey, I got to figure it out before our last meeting. That's my last report to write. So, James, you got anything?
I would just say that I know I went into this a couple years ago really concerned that there's the potential for overspending and all kinds of issues. And this team that they have in place in the district and Rick and his group have done an exceptional job. They've stayed within budget. I think they've satisfied my concerns after spending all the time going out and getting the bond and being concerned that it would just turn into a mess that my name could potentially be tied to. I don't feel that way at all. I think that they've done an excellent job and should really be commended for their work.
All right. I usually have a little paragraph about that, but I'll add that in specifically because, in fact, I'll tell the whole committee this, or the whole Oversight committee. Jim and team and Rick have actually not only done a fantastic job on this, I feel like they've turned around my personal feelings about local government. I went in with similar feelings to you, James, and I have walked out of it deciding to run for city council because I've seen the impact and honestly the integrity and the dedication that the professional staff has had, And I said, you know, that kind of changes my mind about, I always kind of thought, well, we're just throwing money into a sinkhole here, kind of a thing. And just seeing it and seeing how the sausage is made, I've been very impressed with the quality of the sausage, I guess. So I'm right on board with you, James. It's the same thing for me. It's been something that has really opened my eyes and made me want to get involved more instead of what I thought it was going to do, which was confirm that that local government is a cesspool. So I share the similar feelings. Anything else? Kim, do you have anything you'd like to add to the report?
Nope, I think your report was good. I mean, you could throw in that you just called Jim Rose a sausage, but you might want to out.
I might not use that analogy, but thanks. Anyone else? Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting now and look. I guess let me reiterate. Look for an email invite for the tour and ribbon cutting, and then we'll see everybody on November 18th at our wrap-up meeting. All right. The meeting
Thanks,
adjourned.
Taylor. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.